And I hope that some of you will join in and tell us about your rejections and how you felt about it, and then how you felt about it later, because I think that's one of the things. It's a bit of a, you go through it and you come out the other side. That's the hope anyway. So let me start with, who am I looking at? Can I with the slides? Oh, good. Okay, so I thought I'd start by talking about my successes, so you don't think that all I do is rejected. So I left the BBC in 2012. I'd worked there for 20 years. I'd been a news person. I'd worked on 5 Live for a long time. I ran news at Asian Network, and I ran programs at Asian Network. And then I kind of got stuck and didn't know what I was doing. And so I thought that even though I had a mortgage and 4 kids, I'd leave. And so I left and founded Wi-Fi Productions with my colleague, Matthew Bannister, who's in the bottom picture. And we wanted to make radio programs and audio and lots of other interesting things for the BBC and for anybody else who wanted. And we had a really good start because almost before I'd even gone out the door quite, we won a program on local radio that gets syndicated across the whole local radio, which was the Mark Forrest show, is now the Georgie Spanswick show. And we've been doing that for 5 years, which is fantastic and a really amazing start when you're trying to create a new company, making radio programs. Making 5 radio programs a week is a good start. And then we had a real success with my old employer and really the place that I want to work for most, which is 5 Live. It's a station I feel very comfortable with. And they said to us, they said to everybody, all the different companies, we want somebody to do a Sunday evening program that is about the world as it is now. It's going to be about social media. They said, think of it as if BuzzFeed was on the radio. What would it be? And I'm 40, well, I suppose at the time I was 46. Matthew is getting towards 57 at that time. And I thought, we're just the people to tell the world about the new ways in social media. And we thought, well, this is going to be a challenge. But we thought about it, and we came up with an idea that what we wanted to do was a chart show. So the chart show for local radio. A chart show for social media. And we went and found some computer experts, and we came up with this concept called the hit list, which ran for 2 years, and we were very proud of it because we thought it was a really good idea. And then we also did something great for 5 Live, which is about heart transplants. We went and recorded a heart transplant, and we split it up and played it as live over the day on 5 Live, which, you know, another neat idea. Great successes, fantastic. So that's the good side. So if you go on to the next slide, so our biggest issue has been Radio 4. So Radio 4 is probably the biggest single commissioner of speech programming. They're very newsy, they're very journalistic. I've worked for Radio 4, I worked on the Today programme. Matthew works on Radio 4, he presents a programme called Last Word. This, you would feel, would be a home for us. This is, and it's really important for us because there's enough money here to actually make our business grow. So Radio 4 was a big target. So we spent a lot of time in year 1, 2013, meeting lots of people, finding lots of talent, coming up with amazing ideas. I think we put in the end 20 ideas. And the way it works, you put in an idea into a system called Proteus. It's a hideous computer system. You have to write it in very bad type, and it gets sent off. And then after 3 months, it feels like, you get an email saying, the results are in. And then you go into Proteus, and you pick up your first thing, and you see what it says, and it says, rejected. And then you put your next program in, next program idea, you get up, you get rejected. And then you get to the third one, you think, well, this one I really liked. So this one may be the one that succeeds, that gets rejected. And that happened to us in the first year. All of our ideas were kicked out the first hurdle. And that was, you know, quite hard to take. It was quite kind of existential for us, because if we can't make this work, then what are we going to do? You know, how else are we going to make the money we need to pay my mortgage and feed my kids and all the rest of it? And also, how do we do the kind of creative work we want to do? That was always our aim, was to feed my children and do some creative work. So that was really, really tough. So what did I learn from that? Well, I'll give you one example of how annoying this can be. If we go to the next slide. So we came up with an idea about the war game. It was 50 years on from an amazing docudrama, which you can still get on YouTube, and it's absolutely worth seeing. It was based on what would happen if a nuclear bomb hit Britain. And we thought, that's a great subject. And we thought, well, what we need is the right person to talk about docudramas and talk about this. And we rang up Paul Greengrass, who is the Born Supremacy man, but also did lots of brilliant docudramas. He did the one about the plane that crashed on September 11th and all the rest of it. Amazing, just the right man. The only person you could get. We rang his office and he said yes. So he said, I will do your Radio 4 It's fantastic. We thought they can't possibly lose. Click opening, rejected. Okay. And then that was fine. And then about a year later, when this program would have come up, if you go to the next slide. All right, so this is my explanation. This is what we actually put in. You need to read it all, but Bill Greengrass examines why he's a brilliant person. So then what happened was I listened to radio one morning and I heard a trail saying, we're going to do a program about the 50th anniversary of the war game. What? That's my program. You can't just do that. And I felt absolutely deflated because it's like, well, what is it? Is it me? What is it? What can possibly be? And since that time, I've always thought that seems really unfair. It's not fair that my brilliant idea has been rejected. And when I came to do this piece, I thought, well, I'll go back and find out. I didn't listen to the program because, you don't always want to hear people who've beaten you. So I thought, well, what do they have? If you click the next slide, and actually this is their pitch, which they wrote, and it's lots of words. I'm sorry about that. They had a man called Michael Apted, who actually, when you look at his CV, is kind of up there with Paul Greengrass. He's a pretty big name himself. And also, when you look at their write-up, they got into documents at the BBC about how the BBC had decided to ban this film, which was a big part of the story. Now, I hadn't got that when I made this story up, so actually, they kind of won fair and square, which for 4 years I didn't realise, but actually it turns out I'd just been beaten, that's the kind of the stories of the Radio 4 world, and I think I'll come back to that a little bit later on and talk about what the next part of that story is. But I wonder whether other people want to share similar tales of doom. Any of you got an example? Yes, over there. Thank you.
So I'm freelance, and so rejection is a natural part of my world. And I don't mind if I think there's good reason, but as I've got older and more experience, what I'm finding now, the whole small industry in general, is that I've now, sometimes my ideas get rejected by people on news desks with only a few years experience.
Yes.
And I am probably old enough to be their mother. And that is the thing that currently really irks me.
Yeah.
I think that is, you're talking about a well thought through decision. It's disappointing, but it's well thought through. And I struggle with the ill thought through decision by children.
And why are you not the person making the decision?
Because I'm a natural born freelancer.
Yeah. Yes. And so what is it about being what does being a freelance give you that you wouldn't have if you were in the desk making those decisions?
Variety and freedom.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there are two types of people, aren't there? The type of people who get their energy from working within an organisational structure, and then there are people who work their best outside an organisational structure. And it doesn't matter which you are, but you do have to know.
Yes.
And I know that I am the latter.
So can you think of it then in a way that's kind of the payoff for the benefits you get?
Generally, but when I think you are a nitpick and you are 20
Yeah.
and quite clearly this is a very good idea.
Mm.
That sounds so arrogant, doesn't it? But quite clearly it's a good idea, and really, you're just out of school, then I struggle with that.
Yes. Yeah. Somebody at the back.
Can I just come back now? I'm over 30. Good then. I think partly just because someone's young doesn't necessarily mean that they don't know what they're talking about. And also, so I worked in telly, and then I flipped to PR and back, and I'm magazines. So I've had a fair amount of experience of people pitching stuff to me, and also me pitching to people. So I've had kind of both sides. I've rejected people, and I've rejected. And I think partly if you've got a great idea and someone says no, it's really, most people are really willing to give feedback. So just to say, what was it about that idea that didn't
Yes, Tim.
So, I don't know what you talked about.
Well, you got me into this, so
Sorry?
you got me into this. So
Yeah,
you,
so I say, oh, no, thank you. It's not, the rejection is by my microphone. I keep going with this, like, hovered here and might pick me up eventually. So I found it really difficult recently it's not pitching ideas for commissioning, but actually, ironically, one thing I hate having to do is put things in for awards. And because actually the industry does care about awards, and the last 2 or 3 things I put in for haven't kind of prospered, and I found that quite hard. And actually, like, right early in my career, I worked on Newsround and worked with a guy called Matthew Price, and he was kind of a reporter and I was the producer, and I sent him on a couple of really cool assignments, and I put him in for RTS Young Journalist of the Year and wrote this really cool blurb that talked him up and whatever, and he won the award, and I thought, this is really easy, and I went to the awards night, it was like really exuberant and whatever. Of course, he's now gone on to do brilliant, his career has prospered, and he's clearly extremely talented. And what I can't work out, and it almost comes to the point we were just getting into there, which is other things that I'm putting forward. It might be an idea. We talked about the charity earlier, trying to kind of get an idea across about aviation or whatever. Is it the idea is not good enough, or is it that I'm not selling it well enough? And that's what I don't know. Is it fundamentally what I've put in for awards the last couple of times, I just actually not as good as other people? Or is it somehow I've not quite got the blurb right? You've got to think into the minds of awards juries in the same way as you've got to think in your minds of commissioners. So I suppose the flip side of this session is, how can we make our pitches better? And that's what I'm struggling with at the moment, wanting to know how to do.
But you must do the other side of that, because I've done your job, so I know you must sit there every day at meetings, people say, should we do this today? And you say no.
Yeah.
So you do that yourself. So what is it you do? What's your thought process when you do that? You must have your own one.
Well, saying, I think saying no is a totally mercurial thing half the time. It's to do with so many other factors, like on my show, I'm not talking about outside agencies pitching, but just I run a 3-hour show every morning. You edited it, didn't you? Before,
Yeah.
The same slots.
Yeah.
And sometimes, if you've already got a story about health,
Yeah.
if someone else suggests a story about health, you just say, that's a great story, but I'm not doing it today because I've already got a health story. I don't need another health story. And then there's also, someone else might pitch a story, and you go, well, it's a great idea, but we're not going to get a guest on it in the next 2 hours. Whereas someone else pitches an idea, it's not actually quite as good a story, but they say, and there's this person, they're available, here's their phone number, we can book them. Half of it's the art of the possible, not the art of the potential. And so sometimes it's about can it actually happen? Like this idea here, was it that Michael Apted looked more kind of locked in than Paul Greengrass? Question, don't know.
Don't know, do we?
No. But actually, so it's there's so many reasons why you say no to things, and it's not necessarily just the quality of the idea.
Yes. I'm judging some awards in a minute, and it's sometimes you think, why am I being the person to choose this? This is very hard to do, and it's very hard to get it right, and some of it is just capricious. It's just I like this one, I didn't like that one. I got annoyed with your write-up, I didn't get annoyed with this. It's not very well thought out. And I think with the commissioning process as well, you put a lot of effort into your pitch, but they've gone to the next one, and you haven't even, that may be wrong. It may be wrong. They may be making the wrong decision, but you can't do anything about that. That's undoable. It's like your people who reject your idea. What can you do? Not much really. I'll just quickly go on to my next tale of woe. Next slide. Okay, so as I was saying, I'm incredibly proud of the hit list. It was an amazing program. It ran for 2 years. We had a great presenter called Emma Barnett. We did this clever thing, and it told you stories that you didn't hear anywhere else, but often you heard in 3 weeks' time. Often we were so ahead of the game because we were picking up things from Twitter and Facebook and YouTube that people were interested in, and we were picking up things that people who don't work in media organisations were interested in. And it was a really clever thing. And then they said to us, we really like this programme. It's a really good programme. It's doing just what we asked. It is the BuzzFeed on the radio programme that we asked for, but we don't want it anymore. And it's like, what? So, well, the thing is, we're taking Emma Barnett and we're getting her to work with Tim on the morning programme, and so we need something else in that slot. We want to put in 2 other presenters, and they don't really work with this format. Okay, so all that work suddenly feels down the drain, if you like, and that was really hard to take. And although I understood the radio idea behind it and why they wanted to bring back these 2 presenters, because they're actually really good, it didn't feel great. So that's my other tale of woe. So between those tales of woe, I think I've come up with a few thoughts on the next slide. So it seems to me that it really hurts. You know, it doesn't feel good. It feels really personal. It's like, why are you having a go? You know, I had a really good idea, and you go, why? And it might be personal. They might just think you're not the right person to do it. They might think your idea is not as good as other people's ideas. And sometimes, though, it's not about you. It's about what they want, about the fact they've done health already this week. They've already commissioned the 30 part on that. They know that they've got a bit bored of it now. And sometimes it might be you. It might be they don't like what you're doing or what you've got. So that takes me on to the next slide. So this is me coming back from war. So we knew that the hit list was going. So then what they gave us was they said, we've got a new programme. We're a new programme. We want to be with Jane Garvey and Peter Island. That's who's going to replace the hit list. The 2 best news presenters on the radio. And you've got to come up with a pitch along with all the other companies again to win that business. And I can't tell you how hard we worked at that. You know, that was probably the most effort we put in anything, because we didn't want to lose a slot. We didn't want to stop working for 5 Live, and we really wanted to work with them. And I suppose, you know, I think some of the reason why we got it was because we'd done a good job with the hit list, and they still liked us, and it was a true reason why they'd axed the hit list. It was because they wanted to bring people back, and not because they hated what we did or thought we were rubbish. But even so, we had the biggest independent companies also bidding for this slot, also wanting to do it. And so we had to be brilliant to get past it. And we did, so that's great. And then to go back to my Radio 4 tale of woe, after 3 successive years where we got nothing, we thought, well, it's us. You know, they don't really believe us. And we employed a friend of, an old colleague of Matthew's called Sally Spurring, who has a much more, much stronger career in making Radio 4 half-hour programmes. She's done a lot of it. And she's worked on a lot of different Radio 4 programmes. Not the bits, in some ways, working on the Today programme doesn't actually equip you for this, because it's just a Today programme. It's not these kind of rather thoughtful half-hour programmes. So we've got Sally in, and after a year and a bit of trying, we are just about to hear this afternoon our first Radio 4 programme, which is going to be broadcast in November, called Powerlines, and she recorded it yesterday. It's cutting it. So it's, you know, it's the beginning, and we're going to do 3 of those. We've got 1 more coming. So by changing us, or by finding new people to work with, we've got out of that rut, I hope. I mean, whether that goes, you know, it's still a problem, whether there's enough stuff there, but at least we've turned the corner a bit. So on to the next slide. This is my kind of summary of what I thought I'd learned from all this in pitching. I think you have to meet their needs. In a way, it's not about you, it's not about us. You need to meet what they want. And then you've got to really meet their needs, because everybody else is meeting their needs too. All the people around you, they're all clever people. You know, it's not just you who's got a brain. There's all these people with brains. They've all got ideas, and they all want the same thing. You know, it's a massive funnel in this kind of commissioning world. So you've got to really meet their needs. And then you've got to be the right person, because if they don't believe you are the right person to do your documentary, I went back to see who was it who made the Michael Apted documentary. Actually, they've got some CVs. You know, they're good people. You know, and they've made these kind of newsy programs before. Gosh, you know, you can see, again, well, not quite the right people. So you've got to make them believe you're the right person, or you've got to work with the right person, you've got to hire the right person to help you. You've got to change your personal image with them, I think. And then the last one is about the Peter and Jane programme, if you like. So we came up with this brilliant pitch to win the Peter and Jane programme. It was all based on the idea that they would do lots of interviews with people, in-depth stories with people. Actually, it wasn't what they wanted to do at all when it came to it. And so now we do a slightly different version of that programme. But we had to win it to make it. You know, so we had to have the pitch that wins, you had to do the thing that wins you the business, but it might not be the thing you actually do in the end. It might change. You've got to be flexible about that as well. So I wonder whether there was any thoughts about pitching and what's been successful for them, what's worked. Yes, in front.
I thought it was really positive. I Thank you.
Yes.
My name's Rhoda,
Hello,
and I work with a number of different publishers and some other organisations. So quite a lot of what I'm doing is pitching authors or experts in particular fields, some more niche than others, to speak on radio or to write articles for papers or whatever, be interviewed. And I think what I find even more difficult than rejection is the wall of silence, when people don't come back to you. And sometimes you know that's because they're inundated with things. But it's that question that you were saying, you know, is it that I'm pitching the wrong thing, or is it the way that I'm pitching it? Is it that I've just missed it because somebody else pitched it half an hour ago? Is it that they're not interested today, but they might be tomorrow? And then I think knowing how much then to chase is quite tricky, because you don't want people to think, oh gosh, it's that Rhoda again. On the other hand, if there's something that comes up in the news a couple of days down the line which links in with what you're pitching, then sometimes that's the way to get it in. So I wondered if anybody's got advice on, you know, how persistent to be and when to say, okay, I haven't heard back 4 times, I'm just going to leave it. But I don't know what you think to that.
Anybody got thoughts on that? Experience that? I mean, what I'd say is there's 2 categories, I think. Some people are really shit at email. You know, some people don't answer them, they don't read them, they're just appalling. And some of those people are in very senior positions. And in some ways, I think it might be a tactic to avoid getting more stuff. If you don't ever answer, if you don't reply, then the monster that people in these organisations have, which I have left behind, thank God, shrinks a bit. So there's a bit of that. Then there's a bit which is, so you've made a decision, you've gone, I don't want this. But you haven't gone, I don't want this you haven't articulated it in your own head. So you can, if you really thought, and you went, right, the reason why I don't want it is because we had something like it last week, this person isn't quite what I want, I don't really think Rhoda's quite up to, but whatever the reasons are, and I don't want to tell her that, because that's, I don't want to have to think about it, and I don't want to tell her, I just know it's not quite right, so I'm not going to reply. And so those are the things that are happening in their heads. You can't change that particularly. So the question of how much you push it, I don't know, I would say probably more than you want to, because, I mean, I say this as a hypocrite because I often go, okay, I'm not going to do that. But the reality is you probably can ask again because, and maybe another time, because if they're just not answering, they might answer the next time. That happens sometimes. Or if they're not giving you a clear explanation, well, actually, we need the clear explanations because we are trying to serve them. So unless they tell you it's because we did health last week, then okay, I'll pitch them business next week, But you can't give them what they want. So I think probably push a bit more. Hello.
I would just say it's about who you're asking. So I worked for a really scary editor who hated PR people, and when they rang up, she would give them 10 seconds to make their pitch and do a countdown over the phone. So whenever I'm calling someone, I'm thinking, okay, I could get her or the equivalent. But people who understood our desk knew that people like me needed a story for the Saturday paper and would work on that the whole week. So if you pitch it to me, I've got some time to think about it and then give it to her. So is it the right person? If it's not, is there another way in? Is there someone who's her friend on another desk who goes for lunch with her and might mention it? Go for them. Don't just keep going for the one who seems to tick all the boxes.
Yes. I wondered a bit about whether the phone is a good or a bad way to go. Because I know, these days newsrooms are not like that when I started. They're quiet places, people are tapping away. Well, we used to, my first day at the work, there was no computer, there was just a phone and a book with some numbers in it. You had to ring them. And I wonder whether actually that just trying a different way, hello, and trying to actually engage people might be better, particularly for the non-answerers. Might be, I don't know, what have you got to lose? You've got a lot to lose, but it might be worth a go.
I have sometimes found that if I write an email and say, I'll give you a call this afternoon if I haven't heard back from you, they often get back to you.
Yes, that's not bad. That's a good technique. Yeah, sorry, I think it was just somebody at the back. Yeah.
Rhoda, I'm one of the people that doesn't reply to you. Sorry, Reef Jackson. I think there's 2 things. First up, I edit a magazine for youth and children's workers. So if you don't, in the first sentence, say why it's relevant to youth and children's workers, I won't even look at it. And then the second, that's really harsh, sorry, I know, but we get hundreds of emails. And then the second thing is try and figure out how that person responds best. So actually, For me, ironically, it probably is email, but for some people it might be a phone call. Actually, what I find really helpful, if someone tweets me to say, I've sent you an email about a book that you might be interested in, then I know to look out for your email, because we get like hundreds of emails every day with pitches, most of which are completely irrelevant. But if someone takes the time to sort of tweet me or text me or call me to say, you might not be interested, but you might, then at least I'll glance at it.
Yeah, it's the double way. Have two goes at it. Yeah, yes. Over at the front here.
Hi, my name's Christopher Norris. I'm an entrepreneur. One of the things I do is pitch, or rather sort of try to get people in this country and around the world interested in an Icelandic tradition called Jólabókaflóð, which is around books. And I was very close last year to getting a double-page spread in the Daily Telegraph. And I think my answer to rejection is rather than saying you've been rejected, it's more about not yet rather than no.
Yeah.
Because the reason in the end the Telegraph didn't run this feature was because they said, which celebrities have you got involved? And essentially I just started. So I took that back and thought, okay, well I need to get some celebrities involved. So, you know, I found a way of getting some celebrities involved so that when, you know, this year's kind of campaign goes along, then I've got a much better idea about how to pitch it and say I've got some celebrities involved, so I've got more chance of getting the thing into the media.
I think there's absolute truth about that. If you can find a person with a name to attach to something, you've got a better chance, no doubt about it.
The key to that is that they gave you feedback. Exactly. They
Yes.
told you what it was, and that's useful.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, back. Thanks.
Yeah, hi, I'm Sam from Christianity Magazine. I'm guilty as charged, Rhoda, as well. I'm really sorry. Although other stuff we've worked together on before, and it's been great, so that's wonderful. But to answer the wall of silence issue, for me, there's two types of emails. There's the email I receive where it's quite long, and it might say Dear Sam at the top, but actually it's a copy and paste job. And I'm not going to give nearly as much attention. Well, don't be wrong, if it's well pitched as a good headline, I will, and I'll write back on the rest of it. But I'm not going to feel like I have to respond to that email, because I'm thinking this has gone out to lots of people, you know, no big deal. However, if I get a follow-up that's clearly just addressed to me and it wants an answer either way, I'm going to feel guilty if I don't respond to that. So some of it, I think, is just format. If it's a really long email and it looks like it's gone to everyone, I'm not going to feel obligated to respond to that unless I need it. And, you know, I've been on both sides of this. I was a freelancer, so I was pitching to people, and I know how it feels to get rejected, get the silence. But I think from now, being on the other side of it, I just think if you don't hear anything, the chances are we're not interested, and sorry I didn't have the chance to respond to you and the 500 other people who sent me an email today pitching other stories, which may be great, but just aren't right for us right now.
Yes.
Can I add something to that?
Sure, Jackie.
Because I'm Jackie and I'm a film producer, and we get pitched scripts a lot, and people send us an email and it says, we have a rule, if it says at the top, to whom it may concern, bin it.
Yeah.
Because that quite clearly says they haven't done their homework. It's probably gone to 50 other people at the same time, and I'm not bothering to read your script if everyone else is fighting over it. So it is that about, you know, pitching the right kind of film that we do. So when people, to whom it may concern, here's my horror movie. At what point have we ever made a horror movie? Never. We don't do horror movies. Thank you very much. You know, so just doing some kind of natural, normal homework and addressing the right people. It doesn't take much to find out on our website who we are and a name.
Yes. Yes. A little bit of stalking. How's the dog? Let me just go, because we've got 5 minutes left to talk about the sort of the other side of it, which is the rejection. I have done. Do you want to go to the next slide, please? So this is my thoughts about when you are rejected. But I thought this more, although I have done some commissioning, I think more about, I did an awful lot of job interviews over the years and how I tried to make that work for me. I think the key thing, if you are the person doing the you need to have a robust process. So actually, it goes wrong when the person who's doing the rejecting actually is doing it instinctively. They haven't got a method, they haven't got a justification, because then when you get asked for feedback, you've got nothing to say, because you was like, well, I just didn't fancy it that day. It's not good enough, really. And so, in a way, you need to have a robust process. To be fair to Radio 4, they've got a process that's so robust, it does your head in. You know, it's kind of incredibly organised, and they go through it, and you have to work through this long-winded thing. And everybody still moans about it anyway. You know, so you can't win in a way, but if it's something you can feel good about yourself. So I always felt when I was doing, I must have interviewed over the years hundreds of people, and what I know is that if you could go back and you could find the bits of paper that we wrote notes on, and you could see the numbers we gave, and the person who got the biggest numbers got the job. It was as simple as that, which meant I always felt myself like I could justify what I was doing. Now, not everybody works like that, and sometimes, as I say, it's complicated. You know, sometimes there's another reason that people have. I really tried never to get myself in that situation, but I know sometimes people say, well, look, somebody's got the better numbers, but I know when it comes to the job that person B will do better. And so sometimes when Radio 4 commission documentaries, they may like my idea better, but they might go, you know what, there are people who do these things better, and their idea isn't quite as good, but I think they'll deliver better. And so sometimes people cheat the process. Now, that's up to you as a commissioner or a chooser, whether you think that's valid or not. But you need to be able to justify it to yourself, and you need to be able to justify it to somebody else at some point, because, well, otherwise it's not completely honest, is it? And honesty, I think, is a massive part of this. If you are going to be a commissioner, you're going to be a chooser, then you've got to tell people why. You've got to say why. You've got to do your best to give them the feedback they ask for. And give them the kind of the answer to how could you have won it? Well, what could you have done? Don't make it about health, make it about business. Don't do X, do Y. I think one of the things about being a chooser is you can't control how they respond. They might be devastated by losing that commission. They might be in pain. They might hate you for it. You don't always get to be liked if you're the chooser. And I think as people, we have to ask ourselves, is it worth doing that kind of job? Do we want to do that kind of job? Some of us actually feel better offering up and being selected, trying to be selected, because we don't actually want to be the person going A rather than B, because there's a lot of pressure with it, a lot of pain with it. Has anybody got any experience of choosing things, choosing people, commissioning things? Back, yeah?
I think the worst thing is when someone pitches a great idea, but you know they do a really bad job of it.
Yes.
And then you have to say, your idea is brilliant. Would you mind if I give this to someone else?
Yeah.
That's awful.
Yes.
It's nothing personal. It's just that now that I work for a magazine, they maybe not have writing experience, or
Yes.
so that's or they're not a big name, which is again not
Yeah.
a thing.
And do you give them anything in that case, or are they just, do they get something for the idea? Do you give a fine, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess like
that?
sometimes I'll work with them on the idea,
Yeah.
and then we'll like pull in other people to help them write it. But often if you want like a big name in the youth and children's work world, and they just happen to be like a little youth worker but have had a brilliant idea, then it is better to have someone who's like very well respected writing it, because more people are going to read it, unfortunately.
And I guess it depends on why they're doing it. If it's about the idea, if they want their project mentioned, then actually that might be motivation enough.
Yeah, and
they're trying to earn a living, that's really tough.
Yeah, most of the people that pitch to me now, because it's such a niche publication that I work for, actually they're just excited about like getting great ideas out there. Whereas, if you're working in TV or radio or whatever, most of the time it is a bit more cutthroat.
Yeah, often there's both. Anybody else with thoughts? Questions, comments? Over there?
I'm just wondering, and this is kind of a question to the room, but whether it's better to be rejected for an idea that you've just kind of come up with, because when I was a journalist, that was kind of constructive, and you would go away and you'd work on it and you think, okay, that's why that didn't work, and these were where the holes were. But now kind of being on the other side of the fence and working for a charity, you pitch some obscure story and they say no, and it's like, well, you should care about this. It's your fault, you're a bad person.
Yes.
You're the problem with the media. So is it easier kind of being a creative person and being on that side of the fence to kind of learn from those mistakes rather than just moving on to the next thing and thinking,
I think
they're wrong.
Turn it into the kind of the personal of that. How useful is it for us to think it's their fault? I mean, as a habit, I don't know it works that well. So you can spend, when you meet independent radio producers, we all bitch about Radio 4. Even if you get work with them, bitch about them, because they're like, God, why, can't they see my genius? It doesn't help any of us particularly. It doesn't move us on anymore. We're actually wasting time when we could be refining our ideas, and we're wasting emotional energy. And letting all that go should help. I don't know, I haven't managed to do it yet, but I'll let you know. Hello. Hello again.
Yeah, just wanted to say something really positive, that rejection can be helpful. I've started to do work for Radio 4, and I did my first piece from our home correspondent, and the producer there rejected my first few ideas, and I just kept going. And then when he said yes, the angels were singing, because I knew that I had just pole vaulted into this whole new world. And then when I met him, he said, right, this is what I like about your idea, and this is why I couldn't take the other ideas. And so I learnt more in 2 hours from him than I have, it was astonishing. So he has a way of doing rejection which is kind and not personal and helps you to learn. And I think that is brilliant rejection.
Yes. Yes. Anybody else? Oh, that's a bit of that.
What are your thoughts on pitching when it comes to press releases, for example? Is it better to send a press release just to the whole list in one hit, or make it more personalised, send them to people individually?
Well, I think that depends on who you are and what you've got. So if you want, if you've got a press conference where the football manager is going to resign tomorrow, people will show up, won't they? You've got something, you can send it, don't be very polite about it. But if you're trying to sell something from Somalia to Radio 5 Live, you're going to have to do a bit more work. And it just depends. But I still get, God, so many press releases. I don't do this job anymore. It's 5 years, 5 years since I was really the person who chose stuff like this. Leave me alone now. Change your list. I'm still on all the BBC mailing lists, actually. They still send me invites to meetings of senior management, which, is, I've left. That's one in front as well.
Hi, I'm Amanda. I'm the editor of the Sunday programme on Radio 4, which is a religious news and current affairs programme.
Yes.
So I'm probably guilty of all sorts of things that people have been talking about in the room, because I get emails and I don't always respond to them. But I think the biggest thing that I have to think about every week when I'm choosing what items go into the programme is about the audience. Yeah. Because that's what we're there for. Because if people don't listen to our programmes, there's no point us being there. So it's not actually about the editor of the programme or the editor of the magazine or something. We're always looking at what do our readers or our listeners, what are they going to find interesting? And how are we going to package that in a way that they'll find interesting?
Yes.
And I think that's what people have to think about, because quite often I'll get stuff that comes into my inbox, and it's very obvious that the person who sent it has never listened to the programme.
Yeah.
Quite often never listened to Radio 4. And if they had done, they would never have written it and pitched it in the way that they've done. So quite a lot of my job is actually quite easy when I get press releases through, because there's an awful lot of stuff that I'll just go, no, 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 because it's obvious that they don't know the audience which they're trying to pitch their idea to. And so I think if there's one thing that I would say to people is you really do need to understand who you're trying to get your story to. And then that will just help you so much in terms of how you actually phrase your press releases and what you want to do with that particular story.
Yes. I think I'm being wound up. So I think leaving on that point, say the audience, I think that's a very good point. If we're thinking about the audience we're trying to reach, then actually we're probably going to be aligned with the person who's commissioning us. And that is more likely to work, because we're going to have the same interest then. Great. Thanks very much.